So now's the time. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to WeHo Reads, Power and Progress during Black History Month, presented by the City of West Hollywood. I'm your host, Cody Cisco, executive editor of Bookswell, which is producing the WeHo Reads series this year. And I am so excited to welcome five amazing authors and poets who you'll be hearing from tonight. My goal is to move us through their words and into the discussion as quickly as possible so that we can hear from all of them. We're welcoming tonight Angela M. Franklin, who is a poet and essayist whose poetry and essays confront topics often left unspoken, and who recently won an honorable mention award from the Allen Ginsberg Poetry Contest for her poem Unbroken Habit. Welcome, Angela. We're welcoming Jenise Miller. Janice is a Pushcart-nominated poet and author of The Blvd, which is here. Sorry about the blurriness. I'll fix that. Uh, and her work explores intersectional history and geography. We're welcoming Pam Ward. Pam is a California Arts Council Literary Fellow and the author of Want Some, Get Some, Bad Girls Burn Slow, and Between Good Men and No Man at All. Welcome, Pam. We have Romaine Washington. Romaine is the editor of These Black Bodies Are, a Blacklandia anthology, and the author of the poetry mini-memoir, Purgatory Has an Address, and the artivist collection, Sirens in Her Belly. Welcome, Romaine. And welcome to our special guest, Reggie Miles. Reggie is an established spoken word poetry artist from Pasadena, California, whose art and work explores and centers the Black experience. Thank you, Reggie, for joining us. Now, I think we're here at a time that is supremely difficult. Los Angeles has just been through, a real crisis, and especially as I think about the wildfires that affected Altadena and Pasadena and the Eaton fire. We're here to hear from poets who have been affected, who have a voice and want to be advocates for their communities. And I'll be saying a little more about that, but just I'm so thankful that each of you has made time tonight to share your perspectives, your wisdom, your poetry with us. It's something that we need to hear at this moment, and I'm really honored to be able to provide this platform. So I'd like to start, if possible, with some discussion. I want to hear from each of you about the power of words and an early or more recent memory that taught you about the power of words. I noticed as I was reading and experiencing your work, there's this sense that the language is a way of making sense of the past, of the present, of creating force in the world as you want to see it and pushing back against injustice. So I'd love to hear about these memories about the power of words. Angela, if we could start with you, I'd love to hear from you.
So the power of words, I learned the power of words at a very early age. I would say probably around 8 or 9 when my mother found my diary and it was all com complaints about her. And after she found it and read it, I just decided I'm not writing anything else. But my mother is the one who gave me a word, a love for words at very early on. And I didn't know words. She told me to look them up in the dictionary. And I started doing that. And instead of battling with kids on the playground, I would talk about them badly using words that probably didn't know the meaning of, but they somehow stung them because they didn't know. But seriously, words have power. And I think that this is a time that we should be using our power in our words to effect change.
Thank you. And Janice.
Yes, first of all, thank you for sharing that, Angela. That was hilarious. And I have 2 daughters, and I look forward to coming across their words and then reading me and complaining and evaluating my parenting skills. I'm open to critique. I am. Let's see. When I thought about this, when I think about this question, I guess I'm going to go more recent. Power of words. I dealt recently with well, in the past, I mean, time is like moving. In the past several years, of losses, of both of my parents, and like the power of words for me during that time, and it happened pretty much like a year within each other. Was hearing people tell me I was going to be okay, and you know sharing, asking me if I needed anything, and I reached out and I put out a call. I'm like, I'm looking for something, something to kind of hold on to, because I felt like my world had really shifted, and people giving me words and resources to hold on to. Um, and I was, the power of words really just, you're gonna be okay, and like we're here for you, like was so powerful to me at that time. So
It's almost a prayer or a hope. It's
yeah.
beautiful. Thank you. Pam.
Yeah, so I was a reporter for NOMO, which means the power of word, and which is a Black student paper at UCLA. And I remember interviewing people like Eldridge Cleaver and just the accessibility of our elders and how powerful their words were and how learning from them helped to fuel us. And it was always this generation sort of handing the baton, and I just love that. And the art of documenting, whether back then I was a reporter, now I'm a poet and a fiction writer, but the art of documenting that, Janice is doing that well. And then the other thing is, as an activist, I work a lot with Black Women for Wellness, and I remember there was this event, and they're all about reproductive justice, and all these anti-abortion people were there with the little poster of the fetus and all that, and all these Black women were coming to this event, young Black women, and they were really being intimidated by these people. I mean, they had, big bugles and loudspeakers and everything. And I was like, oh, hell no. I was like, where are our rap artists? But I said, that's okay. We're going to bring it. And I created a chant, our body, our choice. And I had them saying, our body, our body, our body, our choice. And we did a rhythm. We started dancing, and we got all up in their face like they were getting theirs until we shut them down. And then they left. And then I said, that is the power of words. And they're very effective. Nobody touched nobody, and it was effective and it worked. So that's when I discovered just being an activist at an event.
And that multiplying power, right? Like
Yeah.
speaking with the people that you want to be with.
Yes.
Amazing. Next we have Romaine.
All of these are just, my mind is pinging all over the place. For me, going back, I have loved words since I was real little also, but for a different reason. I had asthma and I was also a latchkey kid. And so words were like my friends. And the first poem I remember sitting and swinging to Robert Louis Stevenson's The Swing, and the visuals. Even when I wasn't swinging, I was still swinging afterwards because of that poem. And then when you mentioned Eldridge Cleaver, and I remember sitting by the radio and listening to Nikki Giovanni and The Last Poets, and that encouraged me and made me want to write and give voice to, when I watched the news and I saw things that weren't right, to write about it. And I found it to be healing. And then when I shared it with people, they're like, oh man, yeah, I felt that way too. And so you get that. It's not only healing you, but it's healing the listener too, and it's building a bond with them. So um, words have been powerful, I think, since the beginning of time, and will continue to be a force. So.
Beautiful. Thank you, Romaine. And Reggie.
Everyone gave gave the best bomb answers. Like man, I'm so inspired, and I so many things cross my mind. But what I will say, I initially thought my initial connection to like the power of words and how that's been connected to progress or my sense of the world is growing up in the Black church, like the Black Baptist church, where like these words from whether it's from the preacher or like from the choir or from like the elders or from everyone in the church just in communication with each other. And I think that's a very spiritual thing. And I think that very spiritual thing, not only in the Black church, but among African traditional spiritualities and religions, there's a very commonality of like how people use words to make sense of these phenomena, like of life. And within that, that's how we build worlds. So I feel like for me, my introduction to the power of words and words in progression has always been tied for me to world building. Because as a little Black boy in that church, I was so inspired just to be part of that or just to witness that. It was such a very visceral reaction and spiritual connection to this idea of faith and resilience and knowing who you are within these contexts or not. And for me, as a writer, it's my duty to world build. And I feel like more than ever, being from where I'm from, it's my duty to reflect the world that I am part of because I'm part of this community. So for me, it's always been about connecting the past, future, and present, like, we've all mentioned, but also making sure that I'm part of that world and these collective stories make so much sense not only to me, but to the people who I want to see in them. So I feel like for me, it's always been about world building.
Yeah, Reggie, thank you. Words are how we build worlds and we build them together. That's, I mean, it's a really powerful statement. I want to stick with you for a moment and continue this discussion, thinking about that, we're in the middle of Black History Month right now, and we have this idea in our culture that progress can be a pendulum and it can swing back and forth, and sometimes we advance and sometimes we retreat. And where we are right now in 2025 feels like a real hard time to be advancing or even believing in that idea. And I'm wondering, you know, we're seeing the erosion of democracy and civil rights in real time. That's one view of the big picture. But I'm curious, and more intimately, I'd like to hear from each of you how the concepts of progress or resistance or solidarity or world building, as Reggie said, how do they show up in your creative work and your advocacy?
Anyone, or you want us to go in order?
I'd say actually this time, Angela, let's go. Who feels inspiration strike?
Oh, I'm inspired, firing on all pistons. No, seriously. I think that in my case, it is the things around me. I remember one of my professors at Antioch teaching us about seeing the small things that everyone else misses. And so my take for tonight's talk has been to look in the corners and see the small things that everybody else is walking by, like to see the power of struggle of a parent making sure that their kids have something as simple as food to eat, a meal, sitting at the table. Those things also equate to a struggle, and being part of a struggle is because just taking care of your home first, because as the home goes, so does the community, so does the nation. So to me, it was finding the subtleties and the small things that I over years look back on in my life and remember my elders and remember their elders and remember the simple things they did to stand tall in the face of adversity, and how they were united. They were united, and just as I think it was Reggie that mentioned the firm foundation of being in the church, because that that is where the struggle was built on. Without the foundation of the church, the gospel, the singing, and all those things coming together in our communities, we wouldn't have made it without that faith that we had united as one in God and in our music and in our struggle. So that's what I have to say. It's the subtleties and the smallness of the small but mighty contributions that were made by so many people to get us where we are today. And the last thing I want to add is this: if any Black person is here, whether they're on the panel or in the audience, if you are here, your ancestors made that middle passage. They survived it. How did that happen? I think we can go up from any place if we are remnants of that survival.
I would like to add to that. You know, I look at this time as an exciting time. It's a jacked up time. Let's just call a spade, but it is a horrible vision to think that you should just be in the woe is me. Resistance is the key. Remember to boycott this February 28th. Don't shop anywhere except unless it's Black owned or small minority business. But that's how you do it. The bus boycott lasted 381 days, rain, sleet, snow. People went through way worse than this. Harriet Tubman saying right now, girl, I've walked through deeper swamps than this. So even though it is a jacked up time, this is the time where we build community. Our artists come to the table and create. Our community that does activism, the Black Panthers started the free breakfast program, which the United States was so embarrassed behind. They started their own, breakfast/lunch program, but it was the Panthers that started that first. And I'm excited about what can happen. I'm not applauding what's happening, but I'm saying, y'all ain't gonna get me down. I have friends, colleagues, and activists that are planning right now, and that's not what we're about to do. So thank you.
And I want to follow up after Angela and Pam, because before we got on, I was playing Kendrick's Squabble Up. And I was just like, if there was a word, it would be squabble up. Because when things look like they're stacked up against you, that's when you start strategizing. And that's when you start planning on not just, yeah, we're doing the boycotts, but along with the boycotts, like you said, like Reggie said, the Black church had, there were these messages of encouragement continuously in the community. So you had a lot of things going on at one time to strengthen the social justice work that made the tides turn. So yeah, we're gonna squabble up. Yeah.
Janice or Reggie, you want to add?
Oh, go ahead, Janice. Go ahead.
I think I don't know. I feel like it was said. I mean, I love that, like the squabble up. Like it's so true. And everything that Pam and Angela said. In terms of like resistance and even thinking about like stories, I think that in our creative work, and I feel like everyone is kind of bringing this up. For me, I do a lot of like work around like remembering, and I think that remembering is like what helps me, and remembering that, like as mentioned before, like some people kind of use the word like maybe worse, and I'm like, I think it's kind of worse at another time before, and I don't think that I think that the people whose experience I do know of who came before me, and then those who I don't even know, they went through a lot more than I did. They went through a lot more than this, and 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 I and that's what I hold on to, in times like this. And they went through a lot more, and they not only got through it, but I'm here. The fact that I'm here, surviving, thriving in some ways, or trying to thrive, um, you know, it equals the result of their resistance. And I think of like I'm from Compton. I guess I have to say it that way too. I'm from Compton. I'm from Compton. I'm from Watts. I grew up in Long Beach. I grew up in all of the areas. And it's interesting to me that a lot of times, for example, the story of Compton gets told, particularly the story of how Compton like became Black, right? It's told through the lens of white flight often. Oh, like white folks left when Black folks started coming in. But what gets left out of that narrative, and I feel like in terms of the work that I do, the creative work, the research, it is about not countering a narrative, but like embracing that there are more narratives, more stories that we should be looking at. What gets lost in that narrative of kind of like Black folks came, white folks left, is that Black people fought to live here. They fought to live in Compton. They resisted. There was activism. There was chapters of the NAACP. And so when Compton becomes like predominantly Black, I feel like that narrative can't get lost, that they fought to be in a place that they actually successfully were able to move into. And so then the idea of Compton as this Black space, then a different type of narrative has to get attached to it, right? Like one of violence, because now it's this Black space, Black leaders, Black teachers, Black superintendent, Black mayor, all of this that's a result of a successful activism and advocacy. Now, but we got to look at it a different way. We have to. There's another narrative that gets launched, so that we can forget, to try to make us forget that this place became the way it became because people fought to be here successfully. Not just they came and some people left. And even that's not all the way true. There were some people who kind of stayed. But I get, and I mean, that's the connection that I make in terms of like the power of story, where I enter in terms of like, as a creative, as a writer, always looking to like past, present, future. I feel like that is a part of, the culture that I learned in my family, in my community, and like that gets us through and gets us moving forward.
And also, speaking of Compton, my aunt lived in Compton in the 20s, Black family, and the Quakers were in Compton, and my aunt had to, they shot the window out of their front kitchen, and they dug a trench in their front yard, got their Remingtons and Colt 45s, and they shot back, and nobody messed with them again. I mean, people don't tell these stories, but not only were we here before some of the other folks got here, but we have been resisting for years and staying here. And you, as a product of your family, I know you have the Panamanian side, my husband's Panamanian, got to throw that in. And so, we have always resisted. People don't, I mean, they burned a cross on my grandmother's lawn when she moved in Pasadena in the late 40s. So tried to smoke her out, but no, they're still there.
And Pam, following up on that, despite where we live too, when we go to work, we are usually not in all Black spaces. And we have to wear an armor, and we have to code switch like nobody's business. When you talk about the power of words, knowing when to say and when not to say and how to say, we know how words can be weaponized. And we also are beautifully creative with words. Hip hop is such an evolutionary language that it's constantly pushing the corners and yeah, in all kinds of spaces, at home, in the supermarket, uh, in certain stores that are no longer DEI, and just everywhere we go, we have to know what's being said, how it's being said, and how to respond, not in fear, but in wisdom.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a comment in the chat that I think is I want to bring into this. Society always sowing seeds of shame when it is actually victory.
Mm.
To this point of the world, the remembering, the language that we use, creating the reality around us. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts on this.
I
We're
just
not
want
at the
to say,
end. Oh, go ahead.
I
Go ahead,
just have
Pam.
to say, since she brought Squabble up, Kendrick Lamar, Compton, we throwing that in the mat. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning songwriter, okay, from Compton. Serena Williams, Wimbledon champion, dancing at the Super Bowl. You know, these are victory dances. I just
Mhm.
want people to know that. Okay.
Mm, thank you. So we're not at the end of the discussion, but we are going to transition now. I want to say a few words about the series, and then we'll move into the readings. So this is the first of the WeHo Reads 2025 series. Our next event is on March 19th. It's Feminism and Fearlessness. So we're going to be honoring Women's History Month then. I'll share a little bit more about that right before we close tonight. But I want to thank our media partners, Book Soup and Los Angeles Review of Books, who help us get the word out. I also want to thank two people in particular who participated in our Read Local initiative, our inaugural Read Local initiative. That's Shonda Buchanan and Bridget Bianca, both of whom shouted out some fabulous authors and added to this experience. So thank you to both of them. And in their name, we did make donations to the Pasadena Black Equity Project. So that's part of why we're here. I'll put some additional links in the chat. We are, alongside this event, encouraging our attendees and communities to contribute to the Pasadena Black Equity Project and the Altadena Library Foundation to assist in Eat and Fire recovery efforts. So here in Zoom and in YouTube, I'll share those links in a moment. I would also just say that, there is a long library of events that WeHo Reads has put on during Black History Month, featuring some amazing writers, including the late Peter J. Harris. Those recordings are all available on the WeHo Arts YouTube site, so you can watch those and enjoy them. I'll put some links in the chat as well. That's all I wanted to say. Mike, if you're here, I believe you're going to help us with the land acknowledgement, and then we'll move into the readings.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. Love your questions, Cody. The power of words is so important, and all of your words have brought me so much thought and so much to really think about. So thank you for that. I remember as a little kid, like reading books, and like books were my friends. I spent all the time in the library. So the power of words is really important. There's a famous quote from the ACT UP movement, the AIDS movement: silence equals death. So never silence yourselves, and really thank you for always speaking up and speaking your truth. Speaking of the power of words, we always open our events with land acknowledgement. These are words, and they do have meaning behind them. We also like to follow up with action as well. But we do want to respectfully acknowledge that the land that is currently known as the city of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and Kizh peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands. And of course, we know that the fires are directly a result of people not being good stewards of the land. We also, just for those who don't know who I am, I'm Mike Che. I'm the arts coordinator for the city of West Hollywood. I have the pleasure of overseeing the WeHo Reads series with our producing partner, Cody Cisco of Bookswell. And we cannot present this series. It's fully funded by the city of West Hollywood with some help from others, but this is a passion project because our city council does believe in the arts and puts their money where their mouth is, which is even better than words. And so we want to thank our mayor and city council. They're not here with us today, but they would, of course, want to wish you all happy Black History Month and thank you for being a part of this event. So thank you.
And thank you, Mike. With that, I'm pleased to turn over this event to Angela. And Angela, I'm going to read your bio again, just so anyone who tuned in can know that you are a poet, an essayist, whose poetries and essays confront topics often left unspoken, and who recently won an honorable mention award from the Allen Ginsberg Poetry Contest for her poem, Unbroken Habit. I will put a link to Angela's website in the chat. Angela, we look forward to hearing from you.
Okay. Okay. Poet Sage V. Colley once said, "A blues song ain't never been free. It cost somebody something." My first poem, The Subtle Resistance of Daring to Thrive. I can still see Mama beating cornbread batter, sauteing liver and onions, her fragrant ingredients soaking the walls of our small yellow kitchen. The record player rocked Aretha's Respect, baritone, saxophone, organ, and guitar co-signing her reasonable requests. Caught up in the rapture of the kitchens pulsating with soul food and music, I had the know-it-all nerve to ask Mama, "What did you and Daddy do during the struggles of the 60s?" My tilted head, plowed and plaited with cornrow visions of them packing picket signs, high-stepping in marches, her singing second soprano accented with my father's bass, "We shall overcome," while kicking at dogs nipping at their toes. I expected her to regale me with collections of Power to the People, fists in the air, sit-in stories, and after all, weren't they from the South? She instead shoved the cornbread into the oven, stopped stirring the rich brown gravy, whirled and questioned me. What did we do? What did we do? Her dark eyes studied me like she was seeing me for the first time, like when I concocted some lie about some undone chore. She took a deep breath, looked me up and down and said, "I'll never forget. We were busy raising our children," she snapped. And wasn't that the most noble thing she and my father could have done? Raised their daughters and sons to survive Jim Crow, that unholy bird, that phantom? Resistance came in subtle ways, many ways. The next poem is for all mamas, daddies, aunts, uncles who endured and survived enough to help their children thrive. Sometimes resistance came in subtle ways. The civil rights struggle wasn't what it seemed always. The North, the Great North Migration, my forefathers left poor economic conditions, Jim Crow laws, and lynching. 6 million Blacks left the South in search of the warmth of other suns. For every Black person here and beyond, remember your ancestors crammed in the bowels of ships that made it here with the sheer will to survive. This next poem is called Caledonia's Girl. It's in memory of my beautiful neighbor and the legacy of her mother. Growing up, rich, obsidian-skinned Dorothy had it made. Summers filled with tea cakes and lemonade, homemade in Mama Callie's kitchen. Caldonia was a down-home master chef, no degree, just cast iron pedigree. Her black hands were one with Arkansas soil, wielding skillets of catfish or fat pots brimming with bubbling oxtail soup. Callie's dishes were always in demand. She made enough to keep her girls decked out in bobby socks, ruffles, and ribbons. Did it on her feet, never had to on her back. Why, that woman could turn white folks' kitchens and campsites savory with chicken and dumplings, biscuits, grits, and gravy. Dorothy recalled, we never had to hoe someone else's crops. Callie cooked so her baby girl wouldn't have to toil in harsh fields, ripping her tender fingers raw to free cotton from biting bowls. Dorothy's brown eyes grew cloudy, ringed in blue and gray, leaked visions of chasing hens and sneaking pinches of butter pecan cake, frosted, flavored with Mama Callie's sweet love. The civil rights movement was undergirded with the Lord's Prayer, gospel music, and many arms linked across economic and ethnic lines, marching for a freedom that everyone else has benefited from more than those hosed, trampled, firebombed, and lynched. This last poem, Mothers Are Martyred Too, is in memory of Sister Alberta Williams King. I have the best mother in the world, your son 16 once bragged to classmates as he munched on your chocolate chip cookies while chasing chapters in Hebrew text. After parenting Martin was done, you traded an apron for a briefcase. But no sooner than a shelled pea could fall from its sleeve, the weight of an ancient 30-06 sliced through Martin's jaw, severed his stilled spine. You and the world watched as his dreams collapsed and leaked on Lorraine's balcony. Alberta, you and your people kept on pushing, clutching God and a drum major's memory. Martin's prophecies knotted in your bosom like a southern auntie's loose change, stashed in a threadbare handkerchief buried between ample breasts. Tickle them keys, Sister Bert, church members cried out, caught up in worship service. You soldiered on with love, swollen thick in sturdy ankles, calloused feet, pumped pedals on an old Hammond organ. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Strong hands stroked keys, punctuated choir's harmony. The amen corner stoked with each organ note of the Lord's Prayer. Melded alto, tenor, soprano, crescendoed when two shots sang out louder than brass cymbals and bass drums. You slumped forward to baptize Ebenezer air with your saintly blood. Like many beacons dimmed from the searchlight of history, on June 30th, 1974, Alberta Williams King, an organist, was shot to death as she played the organ during a church service at Ebenezer Baptist Church 6 years and 2 months after her son, Martin Luther King, was assassinated. Thank you all for listening.
Angela, thank you. The threads of care and love braided with the injustice and gore. It's very powerful. Thank you for sharing those poems with us.
Thank you.
Next, Janice.
Okay, the first poem I'm going to read is called Jacarandas. I stem from a place defined by color, red and blue, of poinsettias and jacarandas, gold of acacias. We danced beneath pastel jacaranda petals that painted Indigo Street and occasional blues. Rode bikes next to Piru, queen palm trees on Greenleaf Avenue. Hopscotch on bougainvillea-lined sidewalks on Myrrh Avenue. Picked lemons, oranges, avocados, and a crown of star jasmine from backyards on Poplar Street. Tropical trees waved in the breeze at Park Village like parts of Samoa, Mexico, Louisiana. Tamarind Avenue was palette and paleta. Alameda Street was pastoral and al pastor. The names of streets patterned like lines in the sienna brown leaves that grace the ground in fall. Acacia Street, Spruce Street, Arbutus Street, Rose Street, Elm Street, Palm Street, Poinsettia Avenue, Willowbrook Avenue. We never learned about the native trees or that jacarandas, like so many of us, were transplanted here and bloomed. And my apologies, I know some of the names of the streets people pronounce differently. So, you know, if I pronounced it a little bit different than what you're used to. This next poem is called Dolphins. Yolanda Yo-Yo Whitaker whipped, crimped blonde braids and bragged. The earrings I wear are called dolphins. And I became bigger than my block, bigger than my neon green and black biker short set copped from the swap meet, where airbrush tees, corduroys and rows of gold were sold like the dolphin earrings my father bought, 4 gold dolphins, connected 2 by 2 at the nose, and I was wrapped by these shining creatures, swimming toward each other, bouncing daily from the earlobes that foretold my skin tone from birth. And Yo-Yo grew like me from streets of gray and grace, and wrapped me golden, like dolphins, break the light above ocean waves, make surviving the deep look easy. And this last poem I'm going to read, these poems are from my book, The Blvd, is apartments that I grew up in Compton. And, you know, as we've talked about before, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about in the discussion, community was everything to me and to us. And for whatever, you know, stories that people hear about, like, it was really community that like kept us. And our community, particularly our community, Black women in my community, my teachers, my neighbors, my mom, folks from Panama, folks from the South, you know, they really, I'm getting away from the poems, but I just want to say this, like they imagined a space for us where we could exist, where we could have like joy, even in spite of what was going on outside of us and outside of the place where we lived. And so a lot of my poems are about that. And this one is called Ode to the Braiders. Ode to the braiders who made their gun pop, smiled down on us when we got dropped off. From a perched seat, arranged their tools, green grease to cool the scalp, wide tooth comb to caress thick hair, rat tail comb for the large parts, sharp edge comb for the small. We sat at their feet as they braided baskets over our heads, carrying memories of a home we did not remember. Hold your head up, they said. When almost done meant not close, meant soon come, meant just a little while longer. We learned patience at their fingertips. Yes, they could touch our hair. Dookie braids, cornrows, box braids, individuals, bump ends, braided ponytails, burnt ends, beads, and conch shells. We submitted to their steady hands and came up blessed. Put a pot on the burner to baptize our hair in the heat. Gave us a mirror to see our style. Said stand in the full and feast on the handiwork. Over and over, they rendered us sublime in a world that didn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Sublime in a world that didn't. Thank you. Thank you for that, for crafting your remembrance of your community and sharing that with us. Thank you, Jenise. And just to let everyone know, there's all sorts of like celebrations in the chat, which is great to see. So it's nice to read along and see everyone, you know, enjoying as our writers are reading their work. It's really nice. Next up, we have Pam.
Hey, everybody. So this new piece is called Water Hose Man, and it's for Altadena. Don't cry for Victor Shaw. Applaud what he did. A Black man who faced the infernal with only a garden hose in his fist, his gaze set on the abyss. Victor fought like any man inside a war, protecting what his forefathers bled out to get and held steadfast for 55 years. Shaw embodied everything Altadena was, wiry as rebar, spawn of concrete and grit, weathered yet heroic and floorboard strong. A man who went toe to toe, lashing Eden's red jaw with nothing but what amounts to spit. Victor stood on Monte Rosa Drive with something I sipped as a kid, giving up all the juice he had left. Maybe his stream saved something, something that hasn't been born yet. An acorn, a fig leaf, melodic cicada nest. Maybe his efforts will blossom in spring. All I know is when they found him, Victor had a smile on his face, as if his last efforts were not in vain. But don't cry. Maybe struggle is who this man is. Maybe bravery was something that flowed in his own DNA. Maybe ash and soot were something he faced every day, fending off cactus and skunk, becoming machete in a land of weeds, hosing down mountains of charcoal that rose every day, the back taxes, chronic illness, vultures searching overhead, vying for him to sell it off cheap. But some fights are worth a shot, be it your family or the entire block. Even if the deck is stacked, even if you burn both your ears, even if you're covered over your head and the ending's clear, like water flowing over your hands. But sometimes you hold the line, give it all you have. Sometimes you fight, all the sweat leaves your skin, holding on, holding the only weapon you possess, even if it's just a water hose in your hand. Thank you. That's for Victor Shaw and his family. So this one is called Say Her Name in my book, Between Good Men and No Man at All. My daughter Hannah drew that. Hey, Mari, if you're on there. So say her name. And we're facing a lot more of this each day. We used to call her Miss Ann. Some call her Becky. A bossy little cuss who tossed shoes at our head, the kind of hatchet face who sold us downriver. Today we say Karen with a capital KKK. These fraudulent little cunts pop up once a week, demanding to speak to the manager, flapping antebellum tongues with their fake tears, fake traumatized Avon lies, igniting hate crimes as wide as all 50 states, till no man with a suntan was safe. Karens call the cops at the drop of a hat. Black kids selling lemonade or jogging down the street or bird watching alone in a park. On a lark, 'cause she's crazy, or got Cro-Magnum genes. Here she goes tattling, wagging that finger, weaponizing her pussy again, pussing her white privilege stank all up in our face, getting us lynched, tarred or feathered or burnt at the stake, all while feigning some fake-ass distress. Don't believe me? Here's some Karen as shit for your ass. Carolyn Bryan had Emmett Till killed. Susan Smith said a black man did it. The Scottsboro boys were almost lynched by a lion-ass trick. And did I mention the Central Park kids? Some Karens have gone on to obliterate towns. Somebody say Tulsa. Somebody say Rosewood, please. See her muddy little feet? Hear those crocodile tears? There goes Karen playing the same role again, going for another Academy Award. And wait, stop complaining. Stop saying you hate the name. If Karen's the real victim, then go ahead, flip the script. How many black chicks call the cops and send white women to prison? Go ahead, Cinderella. I'm waiting. The Karen moniker marks a legacy of predatory terror. So if the shoe fits, then wear it. Thank you very much. So this poem is called Fracking, and it's from my dad, who was caught in this dam in Baldwin Hills. Maybe the front steps go, or the hallway wall cracks, or the floors never match up again. A rugged seismic shift, like Daddy putting the bug in fifth, causing our shoulders to rear up and back. Daddy got trapped in his Volkswagen during the Baldwin Hills disaster. Mom said he slid all the way from La Cienega all the way down to Fedco, killing the V-dub for good. I remember our rides, Slauson, Pasadena, or Watts, taking the 10 to the Harvard Freeway, hearing the streets chirp like crickets from all those failing bad brakes. Brakes like cars that won't start, or jobs that won't pay, or a man trying to make it home, trying to keep his family at bay, in a city that feels like fracking, like boring a hole in your brain, living on Los Angeles, sink or swim. And this last poem, Car Fight 59, oh God, I hope I can find it. It's an activist poem with a LA car rider's spin. I spent a lot of time in my car, I'm a native. I like LA, particularly the car racing in residential areas. The last one was with this obnoxious slob in a white gloss Benz. Cut me off big time, him and his fat cigar and Barbie bitch glued to his lap. Passed me with one hand. I had to brake so hard my groceries wrecked the back seat. It really pissed me off, but I got back next to him and blasted the most ghetto rap tape I had. Slid all the windows down, started bobbing too, like I gave a fuck, acting oblivious to his dog-faced mug and stuck-up date. I waited in the right lane, foot hovering the gas like a crook, ready to smash it down the second that sucker went green. Wasn't even where I wanted to go. But sometimes you got to show folks, let them know that we all own these streets, even if it means taking in extra scenery. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pam. Thank you for bringing the fire and the humor and the wheels.
Not the FDC or whatever those people that ban words. I hope that.
You're good. You're good. Thank you. Thank you for bringing those here tonight. Next up, we've got Romaine.
Okay. Oh my goodness, as poems were being read, I've changed my mind a dozen times. So I'm going to start with the first time I was aware. Profile, August 1965. Top insurance saleswoman coiffed, red pumps with lipstick to match. She does not gun the engine, but drives with bullet speed in her pearl white tail-finned Cadillac. Sweat and gasoline perfume the air. Time explodes like a meteor, a burst of brilliance, drifting into a whimper, the bashing of heads. Burn, baby, burn, flashes like the sheen of her red pumps. Burn, baby, burn, races with the fury of a caddy down our dead-end street. Burn, baby, burn, into the retina of my heart. Black and white riot flames across our TV. As mom puffs on cigarettes, smoke bathes her hair. Ashes weep in trays about the house we dare not leave. I will never be only a little girl again. Innocence is a place burning and ravaged. So that was my initiation into the conflicts that were and still are. And that's in Sirens in Her Belly. And then I'm going to go to talking about Karen's reminded me of Incident Blue, which is a situation my older son had. Maybe the dog pissed on the carpet one too many times when the neighbor saw my son in the hot tub and called the police. My son's head leaning back on his shoulders, eyes closed, chest expanding in the water. The sun is God and he is God's well-baked son. Eyes closed, steeping like a soaked chamomile tea bag, ready for dreams. Eyes open. Two police stiffly stand over him. Get out the jacuzzi, sir. He is yanked into a nightmare. The sun shifts to shadows on the pavement. My bare chest, barefoot, walletless son stepped out calmly. Make sure not to give the illusion of a weapon. Do nothing to make them nervous. We had a complaint from the complex about a vagrant in the jacuzzi, and the sun is yellow dog piss raining on him. Voice clear, but not too firm. I live here. I can take you to my condo. My son's hazel eye scans neighbors' windows. Police are relaxed and satisfied. On the phone, I hear rage shaking in his voice. I'm no punk, in no mood to see you. I look like Mr. Clean, but I'm no punk. His mind paces. A neighbor called the police. I gotta calm down. I can feel his tears punching holes in walls. I'm no punk. Had to stay calm. The police. I gotta calm down, but not today. And talking about communal experiences of being othered and targeted, all-American pastime. Sun is a blaring white ball of rays beating us like a bat till skin bleeds sweat. Mouths full of heat, boys hack and spit, bus stop sidewalk. Cop strolls over, book in hand, demands names, presses tickets to 14-year-old Black boys' palms. Penal code, illegal to spit in public. We spit protest, sunflower seed chomping, tobacco chewing baller spit. Boxers rinse and spit. Footballers rinse and spit. Cop Blake stares us. Ignorance is no excuse. Hand on belt, he turns his head, spits a blaring white ball. Foul on the way home. No umpire to intervene. We retreat to benches. Learning the first strategy in survival is knowing who not to trust. The loud buzz of a fat fly threatens us to swat. The second strategy in survival is knowing when to swing. So I don't know how much time I have, and I don't want to go over. So I do have one more. I have one more.
Go
Um,
for it. Go for it.
this was the poem that I was going to read, and I thought, no, and I went back and forth. But when we talked about church and we talked about the power of words, um, I wrote this poem that makes me happy every time I read it. I wrote this poem at one of the lowest points in my life when I had to say, what's the point? And it's called The Blessing of a New Day. I woke up this morning with the sky above my head and the earth beneath my feet. And this may not sound like much call for gratitude, but try asking the person with the earth above his head and the sky beneath his feet. And you see what I mean? You see what I mean. I woke up this morning, recognized the sun, got hot, broke sweat just from thinking about being clothed in yellow and walking in naked light. And when the sun sweetly coats my skin like hot syrup on pancakes, it is all I can do to breathe the sweet scent of maple permeating everything around me. This is the day the Lord has made, and coffee is not only the color of my skin, but the taste on my tongue, the rush through veins, opening my eyes and ears like the alarm clock of thunder. The sound of rain is the sound of a million liquid hands clapping. My two join in gratitude, and it may not sound like much to you, but the trees and the wind are making ovations everywhere in this awakening ritual of senses, in this good, good morning of thanks. I will rejoice and be glad. Thank you.
Thank you, Romaine. Thank you. I'm glad you shared that one with us. The trees in the wind are making ovations everywhere. All right. Reggie, you're up.
All right, what's up, y'all? So my first poem that I'm gonna read and share is titled Roses Snatched from Concrete. And I wrote this in 2020 when BLM as a movement was going on, when Breonna Taylor and George Floyd were murdered by the police. And also specifically in my community of Pasadena, California, Anthony McLean was murdered by the police. And being a community organizer, we was organizing. And I wrote this piece of how I felt and what I saw and how Black people, Black bodies, and this city and communities, well, this city who's been so violent historically and contemporary now, trying to push Black people out, have deemed us as expendable, as not worthy to stay and just exist. So this is what I wrote, and it's a piece about resistance. And it goes like this. They give us handouts, having us like gifts in a little shop of horrors, thinking we're an exotic bunch, having us be their gift to their communities. But is it a gift or a confused illusion of their continental drift, lost from the European swifts, only to steal what they can't have? Roses snatched from concrete, that was colonials picking, to be handed to corrupt people. Our roots forgotten, but stems still spotting, were seen as property, a bunch pretty to see, but hurtful to touch. You see, me and my people are those roses, taken and disrespected, forgotten and neglected, discerned and politically second. Second to even the cashier who sold us at the store. They think they know what's best for us, putting us in vases like Black Cinderella wanting to find her Prince Charming, only to need a distorted individual, only to find her worth among flowers that bloom in the dark that is residual. We got to start checking the criminal and thinking critical, for the roses snatched from concrete are revolutionary and non-political. paving a new material that's acritical and restoring balance that's diacritical, because we are the roses seated above concrete. Man, I love that piece. This next piece is titled Roots. And this is a piece about identity, Black identity, uh, Black American identity, Black Central American identity, and just joy. So that's how it goes. It's titled Roots. This is a ancestral reconnection, a day of roots never forgotten in a realm that is still spotting how we've come so far to dream so big. This that grandmama and abuelitas in the kitchen singing folklore songs that transcends generations. How the children of our children hold futures of freedom and justice. Where si se puedes meets divination. Where ancestors meet descendants in rosas. Only then we can blossom into a light. One where ancestral prayers meet generational blessings. We celebrate our history, one that knows no paper, but a language of stories, of her story, of his story. We speak ourselves into legacies, ones that hold generational wisdom. We celebrate our love, one that time travels, rooted in what our grandparents and our abuelos passed down to us. Where there is love, there's a presence of them in our hearts. Because we are the blueprints of architects that sculpt Black and brown bodies, gifts of perseverance, tools of resilience, and superpowers of innovation. Day of our roots, we are the seeds of resilience. We are the flowers that bloomed on the sun. We are timeless. Because of them, we are. Because of we, there is love. Oh, I love that poem too. Okay, and now this last poem. Oh, that poem got me in my feels, y'all. Got me in my feels. This last poem is titled Destiny. Okay, here we go. And this poem is about being a Black young man and trying to figure out, like, making sense of, like, what is my passion? What do I like to do? What is my purpose? Like, am I doing this right? Am I doing X, Y, and Z? And you trying to expect and just trying to figure out just life, like, okay, like, this is where my life is going, and is this the right way? And I think this piece, Destiny, also speaks to the idea of expectations and how we expect our lives to go and how our communities to look like. And yeah, that's just not how it is. So, Destiny, this poem is titled Destiny, and this is how it goes. I ran away from her, wondering if greatness resided in myself. For surely a Black boy giving a gun to his head is a typical story. And I ain't just talking about the bullets that shoot out of a metal gadget, but the gunmen of a society that shoots me up of illusion, causing a self-hatred and destructive confusion. A boy ran away from destiny, making him run away from a truth that's present in his youth. It gave him anger with a success ticket from a booth that sold out of ball game arenas in a corrupt system. But surely this matrix was a show. Did I find you under a playlist of songs that speak of pain? Was this my Nina Simone anthem? My ears were only bigger than my heart at a time where I wanted to hear myself breaking and bending to a game I was playing with myself, a deprogramming deeper than myself. But a divine spoke to a higher me. It exuded roses and manifestations of myself. She found me, and I didn't let her go. Let me be with you. You took me out of a losing game. Was love my antidote? Were you always following me? I guess that's what happens when destiny broke. So that is destiny. And if you would like to follow the work, the art that I do, I'm the founder of Elijah's Roses. It is my creative brand and artistic platform where I showcase and house all of my poetry and my projects. And the poems that I just shared are going to be on my upcoming debut poetry book. I'm going to be up there with these vets I'm with on this panel. So I just hope to get there. And yeah, if you want to follow me, again, it's Elijah's Roses on Instagram. And yeah, thank y'all so much for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. And thank y'all so much for in the chat. I appreciate y'all. Much love. I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna get to the chats and messages.
Reggie, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your words. Very excited about your book of poetry. I'd love to hear when it comes out so that we can all get a copy. And thank you again for all the work you're doing with Pasadena Black Equity Project and for the fire recovery. Um, we need community advocates right now, and we need people like you. So thank you. There will be some time for us to do Q&A. So if you're in the audience here or on Zoom or on YouTube, you can put your questions in the chat on Zoom. Use the Q&A option. If you're on YouTube, use the chat option, and I'll relay them to the writers. I want to ask, if there are any reactions. You've all now heard each of you bring up so many great lines, so many powerful poems. Is there anything you want to share before we get into the Q&A and discussion?
I just want to thank everybody for being here and sharing. I'm full. I'm just really full. And Pam, I do have a question for you, and that's the poem that you wrote about, the brother that fought the fire. Did you personally know this experience, or did you read about it, or how did you know about this?
I several ways. Friends knew him, and then I read about it in LA Times, and there was so much disparaging language about his story, about what a fool, why didn't he leave, and so I wanted to write a poem that showed exactly why he stayed and what Black property ownership meant and what he was really fighting for, against, and what we've been fighting for years. So I wanted to document that effort because he couldn't say it. So I wanted to be his voice.
And then, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Were you done?
I had.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just had questions.
I wanted to add something to Pam's poem. Pam, that was to me one of those examples of finding something that everybody else is overlooking, and you did that so beautifully. And just a whole different perspective. And I really appreciate what you brought here tonight with that poem in particular. It really touched me and resonated very deeply.
I probably should mention that my family lived in Pasadena since 1904. They were there before Pasadena was called Pasadena. Their street was called Modena. My father was James Moore, and he called it Modena, a blend. Now it's Colorado Boulevard. But, I wanted to showcase that. There's been Black folks that have been here that have been struggling and fighting for these things. And so I was really moved to write that.
Yes, thank you. And then, Angela, you wrote a poem about Martin Luther King's mother, and I was wondering what brought you to write about her death. That was a powerful parallel in that poem. So I was curious about that.
Well, as I started researching on the civil rights movement and who played pivotal roles there, and I thought about his mother, and how so few people knew that Martin Luther King's mother was assassinated at the literally at the organ in the church.
Hmm.
And how a lot of people don't know that history. And I was like, you know what, as poets and writers, we have a responsibility to shine light in those small corners that people are missing. And another poem I'm working on about her is called How Does a Woman Raise a King? And so, this woman was a force in her own right as a Black mother. And I thought, you know what? There's not enough written about her and the things she did. And so I wanted to just give her a spotlight, and not just her death, but also what she did, and the things that she sent him cookies. And it's, again, as one of my professors said, find those small details that nobody else is focused on. I mean, who writes about somebody sending somebody chocolate chips? But that stood out to me. That was a mother's love and care.
And I'm not going to, I have a question also for Janice and Reggie, but I'm going to wait because I'm going to take up probably questions that are going to be in the webinar. And then if we have some time, I have a question for the two of them.
I say go ahead. I want to know what you want to know.
Oh, okay. Well, Janice, I have a question for you. And like, I read the Boulevard, and then we've had, Pasadena, we had that horrific fire that just gutted neighborhoods. And so, what inspired you to say, I want to take, I know you told us about, Compton and the white flight thing, but most people know about stuff that goes on historically, but they don't stop to take an x-ray of the people in their neighborhood. And so you have that now. And I wish that for the people that lived in Pasadena, and I wish teachers would do that with their, because brick and mortars are disappearing, just things are just evaporating. And so I wanted to know, for your book, and for your perspective, what was the fire inside of you that made you look and write about it?
What that's an interesting question. Thank you for that question. I think it was because I was dealing with loss at that time. I was writing this book when my mother was ill. And so it was almost like I'm remembering her, and like she was the manager of these apartments. And so there's a lot of magic that really a lot of the women in this community, but that she did in order to like help people. It was like a low income apartment. I remember one time there was a family that lived with us, but because no apartments were available until an apartment was available. And but I don't know, I just have so much, and actually other like folks that I grew up with there, we have such joyful memories of living there. And just being around each other, playing, just joyful memories. And so I think what was coming up for me was like remembering this place and remembering it as a place of joy, and then understanding like, how was it possible? Like I have a memory of like flowers in a flower bed there. And I actually looked at a picture. There were no flowers in there were no flowers, just patches of dirt.
You
But I'm like,
planted
I
them.
remember flowers being there. Yeah. And it's like, even just going back to imagination, like the experience that this community gave me, that I remember flowers in a place where there were none.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful to this community. So that the book is about that, is being grateful to them, is honoring them, is honoring being a part of them. A part of this community, is honoring that community, and like that community is still with me. I do miss it. I don't know if it could possibly be the same community though now, like it was then. It was a completely different set of circumstances. But like that community gifted me so much, taught me about interdependency. It was those days where you could borrow a cup of sugar from the neighborhood, like you're borrowing, but nobody's gonna return that sugar or that egg.
Yes.
kids, the moms are looking out for each other. Like, just thinking about it now, like it's just, and I'm glad that I have that and I carry that with me. And when anybody tries to say something about Compton, I know, I got some things to say about it too.
And you never know where future and history are going to meet again when things get really rough and we have to stand firm. With interdependence becomes more how we thrive and survive. So yeah, and then Reggie, the poem that you wrote that inspired you during BLM. I wanted to know more about, I know you gave us a smidge before you read that poem, but I wanted to know a little bit more about what was going on inside of you and the connection with the broader things that were going on.
Yeah. I think the initial thing was racial battle fatigue. This idea that as Black people we experience a specific type of fatigue. That when it comes to seeing a Black person mutilated and killed online. So I feel like for me, it was a lot of grief. It was a lot of sadness. I didn't know this community member, but Pasadena, Altadena, we're like a town. Everyone knows everyone. So I knew people who were related to this person. I knew people who knew this person, who knew this man whose life was taken away. So it's like for me, being an organizer too, and already the world, the state of the country and the world, globally, Black people are sought out and killed by the state sanctioned violence. For me, it just hit really home. So outside of that grief and these tears that were shed, it was a reminder that Black life is so sacred and so special. And the system teaches us that we don't deserve to exist. We don't deserve to be ourselves. We don't deserve to be safe. And in that piece was in my mind, a lot of my approach in my work is, whether it's conscious or not, is okay, this is what's going on. This is how I feel and what I see. And this is the antidote. Like when I ended off with for the roses seated above concrete, something around like we're revolutionary not and revolutionary non-political. I'm saying we're revolutionary because we have each other and we're gonna come together. And that was
Yes.
product of that happening. We had to come together, different organizations like the NAACP, organizing an advisory board, police advisory board, just to, I don't know if that's the right name, but basically an advisory board to be an on watch for certain protocols and policies. And Jasmine Abdullah, who's a warrior and like one of the people in Dina, a Black organizer, like warrior spirit, being out there in the streets, like, hey, we're from the march, and like Pasadena Black Equity Project, and My Tribe Rise, just other organizations doing our part where we can show up. So I feel like for me, it was a piece about resistance. It was a piece about processing. It was a piece about rage and anger, because this is a continuous thing that Black people experience, not just in America, not just in California, not just in Pasadena, what happened to Anthony, but around the world. And we don't have to be political, but we are political. And that simply is just like being in community with each other and organizing with each other. That's political.
Yes.
Even if we don't want to be. I'm not gonna knock the homegirl down the street. I'll be like, man, forget that. I'm not going to no meeting about no politician. But she's still showing up to the protest, but she's still donating water to the organizers.
That's
There's
political.
different ways that we fit in. So I just commend everything.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for letting me ask those questions.
And Romaine, how did you come up with the title of Purgatory Has an Address? Is that what it is? Has an address?
Yes,
I
yes.
love that title.
I like Janice. I wrote this book when my mother died, and I came from a closed adoption, so the first third of the book, I didn't know who my family was, my birth family at all, and my mom was my last connection. And right after the book came out, like a year later, I found my birth family. But my mother, Short, they adopted me, my mother, my adopted mom, my adopted dad. And I'm going to go ahead and read the poem real quick, and then you'll know exactly why it's called Purgatory Has an Address. Mom said this place looks like it tried to burn itself up. Summer's close enough to hell to make her want to leave. Winter's warm enough to convince her to stay. Mom decides to make it lush till dad's heart dies in the middle of the sun, mowing a neatly planned green grass dream to please her. Buried, Mom never visits dad's lush lawn grave for fear of not wanting to leave. Mom wants to move, but penance is a slow process, and there is nowhere to go where dreams can promise not to die.
Hmm, that's right.
That's purgatory.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for reading that.
Thank you for asking.
That final line, some of those last lines are just so good, so strong. Thank you.
You know, I want to say something to the audience out there because we're in a different time right now, and some people are waiting to be published. Like you're waiting for the gods of the publishing industry to come down and bless you. Go to the gods of the Xerox machine at Kinko's, get you some paper and a stapler, make your own books and start putting them out. That's how I started. And I made my first chat book called Jacked Up. And, you know, just start selling it. Don't wait, because sometimes that can lead to something. You'll be reading. You don't have to get permission. Since you're reading one more poem, this is called Why My Tea Sticks. Threw a typewriter at me from the upstairs front window. Now use that in a poem, you bitch. So I did. So write, just keep writing no matter what, and self-publish.
I should be muted. I'm sorry.
This is fantastic. I feel like this could go on for hours, and I would love it too, but sadly we are nearing the end. So I want to thank each of you, Angela, Janice, Pam, Romaine, Reggie. You've given all of us so much to think about, so much to feel, so many different ways of building our world that we didn't have before just, an hour and a half ago. So thank you for that. Thank you for showing up in this time and for all of your words of wisdom.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, I wish everyone in the world, everyone who's watching this, fire in your belly and words that matter. And with that, I think I'll draw it to a close. I do, before we go, want to just plug for a moment our next WeHo Reads session. Katya Apakina, Olga Garcia Echevarria, Angelina Sayens, and Kate Stamen London is coming up on March 19th. It's going to be fabulous. Angela, Janice, Romaine, Pam, Reggie, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you
Yeah.
to everyone who showed up.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
No doubt.
Thank you. And thank you
Yeah.
for the comments in the chat.
Mhm.
Thank you
It
for
was an honor to read with all of you as well, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.